Hey guys, it's Jen. Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another video. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing some meals that I made out of my pantry and freezer, and all of these meals were made with no ingredients from the grocery store. First up, I have a chicken cordon bleu recipe to share with you, a baked potato bar, some shredded chicken tacos, and refried beans in the Instant Pot, a homemade vegetable beef soup with cheddar biscuits, and last but not least, a crustless quiche with hash browns. You guys are going to get double the inspiration today because today's video is a collaboration with my friend Christine at Frugal Fit Mom. If you guys, for some reason, are living under a rock and don't know who she is, Christine is a mom of 4 and talks about a lot of similar things on her channel that I do on mine. She is an awesome home cook and posts also a lot of great budgeting content, and she is also into fitness. And so if that sounds like something that you are interested in, be sure to check out her video after mine. I will have it linked in the description box below. She is also going to be making 5 dishes just using the ingredients in her pantry and freezer. So if you go over to her channel, make sure that you tell her that I sent you. Okay, so let's get into these meals. As we go along here, I'm going to be giving you some tips and tricks as far as preserving and storing food, especially now that we are all trying to go out to the grocery store a little bit less. I think that this is particularly helpful at this time. So this first recipe is a chicken cordon bleu recipe. It's actually out of a keto cookbook that I have. It's called Simply Keto. It's one of my favorite keto cookbooks. I ordered it on Amazon. I'll link it down below. And so the coating for this chicken calls for crushed up pork rinds. And so in my food processor, I have pork rinds, some Parmesan cheese, some garlic powder, and some pepper. And I'm just going to process that until the pork rinds are in very fine crumbs. Now, if you wanted to make this recipe and you didn't have pork rinds on hand, you could totally do it with breadcrumbs. I always keep breadcrumbs and panko breadcrumbs in my pantry, and so that would be a great substitute for that as well. I have some chicken that I pulled out of the freezer, and I also always keep some type of lunch meat in the drawer in the fridge along with cheese. I also have some melted butter and again my pork rind mixture. So this recipe is very simple, not too many ingredients. Obviously the classic chicken cordon bleu is with ham and Swiss cheese in the middle, but whatever you have on hand I think would be really great to customize this recipe with. So basically all you're doing is you're taking your chicken breast. I sort of cut mine in half so they were a little bit thinner and I could roll them around the filling. If I would have had my choice, I would have pulled chicken breasts out of the freezer that were a little bit larger, but this is what I was working with, so that's what we did for today. If you don't have ham and Swiss cheese on hand, you could definitely use bacon and cream cheese, or you could use bacon and cheddar. If you had like some type of like garlic or garden vegetable cream cheese, that would be really good in these. The basic process is just stuffing your chicken breast, and by stuffing I mean just kind of rolling it around the filling, and I just dipped it in a little bit of melted butter and then coated it with the pork rind Parmesan cheese mixture. So once those were all assembled, I just went ahead and popped them in the oven. I did use foil on my baking sheet just to protect it from the melted cheese. And I'm cooking those at 350 degrees for about 40 minutes or until they are done inside. Now, I had some fresh green beans in my crisper drawer out in my garage refrigerator, and so I am going to steam those up as a side for this. Green beans are something that hold up really well in the refrigerator if you keep them really cold, and so that's a good way to stretch fresh produce if you want to go to the grocery store less. So here are my chicken cordon bleu bundles when they came out of the oven. Again, I just served those simply with some green beans to keep this low carb. If you wanted to, you could totally do some rice on the side. These were really good, and I will say too that these are super family and kid friendly. They come out tender and delicious, and my kids enjoy them every time I make them. Okay, so next idea I have for you is a baked potato bar, and there are a ton of different things that you can put on top of baked potatoes, but today I'm just going to be making a quick chili in my Instant Pot. I like to make chili ahead of time, especially for freezing. That way I can pull it out if we want to have chili soup or chili dogs or chili on top of our baked potatoes. So in my Instant Pot here, I have about 1.5 pounds of ground beef, a chopped up onion, and a chopped up jalapeno. Any veggies that you have in your crisper drawer that you need to use up would work fine in this. If you had bell peppers or zucchini that you wanted to throw in there. And I like making my chili in my Instant Pot, but you could totally make this in the slow cooker or just on the stovetop as well if you don't have one. I do have an older video on my channel where I share my chili recipe in my Instant Pot, so I'll link that video down below. But the basic ingredients are ground beef, onions, jalapenos. You can use ground chicken or ground turkey, or you could even use stew meat, beef stew meat. I've done that before. Whatever meat you have in your freezer will definitely work with this. And so once the beef is sauteed, I went ahead and turned that off, and then I'm going to add the rest of my ingredients. So I have some canned chili beans, some petite diced tomatoes. I also have a can of Rotel, some tomato sauce. I also usually add a couple of cans of water along with the tomato sauce. It depends how thick you want yours. Some salt, pepper, and I also have paprika, some chili powder, and some cumin. That's sort of the basic recipe, I would say, for my chili. You can definitely use whatever beans you have on hand, or you could leave the beans out if you wanted. It's very forgiving, and the main thing is just to mix everything together and give it a taste. I also sometimes add a tablespoon of sugar to it just to cut the acidity of the tomatoes. So once my mixture is in there, I just use the bean and chili button on my Instant Pot. It sets it at high pressure for 30 minutes, and it's perfect every time. Now, I have used many brands of Instant Pots and other brands of pressure cookers over the years, and my favorite is still the original Instant Pot. I have the 8-quart one, which I would definitely recommend. I'll link the one that I have down below. It has done me well for many years, and I still continue to use it at least once a week. So here's what my chili looked like after it was done in the pressure cooker. I did do a natural pressure release for about 30 minutes just to make sure that it wasn't too hot when I let the pressure out. And next I worked on baking up my potatoes. So I just have some russet potatoes. I forgot to poke them, that's why I'm taking them out. That I scrubbed. I brushed them with olive oil, sprinkled them with salt, and poked them with holes. I baked those in a 400-degree oven for about an hour or an hour and a half until they are done inside. Now it's time to top your potatoes with whatever you want. So in this video, obviously I'm sharing with you a chili topped baked potato, but the possibilities with this are really endless. Just last week, actually, we had baked potatoes with taco meat on top, like a taco baked potato. That was really good. You can also do cheese and broccoli and sour cream. You could also add some bacon bits. You could do like cubed up ham and cheddar if you had leftover ham from Easter. There's tons of opportunity to dress up your baked potatoes, and the best part is that these are a really good family-friendly meal. My kids love baked potatoes. They are cheap and cheerful, and they are super filling. So here's a look at what my potato looked like on this night. I just put some butter on there, some salt and pepper, chili, cheese, and I'm sorry, Murphy, you don't get any. I did give him a piece of cheese actually, and sour cream and green onion. It was so delicious. Okay, next up, I'm going to share with you a shredded chicken taco recipe. This comes out of a kid's cookbook I have. It's an America's Test Kitchen complete cookbook for young chefs. I'll link it down below. My kids have had fun making different recipes out of this with me. I did go ahead and make this in the crock pot on this day. And so in my crock pot, I just have 4 chicken breasts. I'm going to add some Worcestershire sauce to that, along with some garlic, some fresh squeezed orange juice, and some chili powder and some salt. So I am going to cook this on low. It only really takes about 6 hours on low, but if you wanted to do it on high, it would probably take about 3 to 4 hours. And then I also added some ground cumin to the mix too. So along with the tacos, I had some pinto beans in my pantry and I wanted to try and make my own refried beans in the Instant Pot. So I have 2 cups of pinto beans that I've rinsed and picked over. Also for this recipe, you'll need some olive oil or any kind of oil that you have on hand will work. 1 jalapeno, a small onion, some fresh garlic, 4 cups of chicken broth. I'm just using the Knorr chicken bouillon is what I keep in my pantry all of the time. You'll need some salt, a few bay leaves, and then also some oregano leaves and some cumin, and that is it. It's a very simple recipe. I also wanted to mention that I get a lot of my beans and nuts from Nutstop. They do deliver right to your house, and I do have a coupon code for them, so I'll leave that in the description box below if you're interested. So I think the focus is going to go in and out on this clip. I'm pretty sure it was focusing on the Instant Pot in the background, so sorry about that. But what I'm going to do is just chop up my onion and my jalapeno and get that sauteing in my Instant Pot. I will leave a link down below to this recipe that I found online. We really liked it. If you've never made homemade refried beans before, they're actually really good. They taste a lot better than what you can get out of a can, and you can customize them to make them as spicy as you like. Even though there was 1 jalapeno in this, it was not too spicy. My kids actually ate these and liked them very well. So I'm just sauteing the onion and the jalapeno in my Instant Pot in a little bit of that olive oil. Just make sure that you stir that frequently so that it doesn't burn to the bottom of your pan. Next, I added in my chicken broth and about 2 cups of water. This is what your beans are going to cook in. I also added my seasonings, a couple bay leaves, and my cumin and oregano. And then go ahead and stir that around until it is well combined before you add the dried beans. This actually didn't make as much as I thought it was going to make. So if you have a larger family, I would recommend doubling this. But once I stirred the beans in, I'm going to go ahead and cook this on high pressure for 45 minutes. Now, once that finishes cooking, you do want to do a natural pressure release for 25 minutes. And so that just means let the Instant Pot sit and let that sit for 25 minutes before you release the pressure. Here's what my chicken looked like after it was done cooking. You can see that it's very easily shreddable. It just breaks right apart. So I went ahead and shredded that and added it back to the juice. Here's what my beans look like. Now, these are a little bit soupy, and so what you'll end up doing is removing some of the liquid, about 2 cups of that, and setting it off to the side before you drain the beans. Go ahead and drain the beans in the sink and add them back into your Instant Pot along with some of the cooking liquid. Now, you can use a potato masher to mash these up if you like a chunkier consistency. That's what I started out with, but I actually ended up using my immersion blender just because I wanted them a little bit smoother. At this point, you just want to taste them, and if they need salt, add that or whatever seasonings you think that they need. So for our meal, I went ahead and heated up some flour tortillas. You can store those in the freezer. They freeze really well. I also have our shredded chicken and some toppings, so some shredded lettuce, cilantro and onion, tomatoes. I shredded up some cheese to go with them, along with some taco sauce and sour cream and black olives. So here's what our dinner looked like on this night. This was a really great hit with my family. Everyone liked the beans. The kids even ate some bean burritos as well. So I would definitely recommend making this whole dinner. It was delicious. Okay, so next up, I'm going to share with you guys how I make a hamburger vegetable beef soup. This is something that I've been making for a long time, since I was newly married, and you can definitely make vegetable beef soup with stew meat, but did you know you can also make it with hamburger? Sometimes it's a lot cheaper, and I know a lot of us keep ground beef in our freezer, so it's a great way to use up any meat and veggies that you have sort of lying around your house. So for my recipe on this particular day, I was going to make it in the Instant Pot, but you could totally make this on the stovetop, and you could also make it in a slow cooker as well. So the first step is just to cut up any of your veggies. So I have an onion and some garlic. Both of those store really well in the pantry if you keep them cool. And I'm adding those to my Instant Pot with about 1.5 pounds of ground beef, and I'm just using my Pampered Chef Mix and Chop to chop that ground beef into smaller chunks. I'll link one down below if you don't have it. I use it pretty much every day to every other day in my kitchen. Once the ground beef was in there sauteing, I went ahead and turned my attention to my veggies, or the rest of my veggies actually. So carrots and potatoes are another few vegetables that really maintain their freshness. You can keep carrots in the refrigerator for a really long time if they're kept cold. And so I just went ahead and peeled those, and I'm cutting these into small bits to include in my soup. If you didn't have fresh carrots on hand, you could use frozen mixed vegetables, frozen corn, frozen peas, basically any type of vegetable that you have in your house will work in this. I am using these today because I bought an abundance of carrots a few weeks ago and we're still trying to get through them. One thing that you want to keep in mind when you're cutting up your vegetables for a soup is to cut them fairly small. You don't want really large chunks of meat and veggies, especially in a soup like this, because it will be hard to eat. You won't be able to get a good mixture of the vegetables on your spoon while you're eating your soup, if that makes sense. I also took out 2 russet potatoes, and these look a little bit bruised, but I still went ahead and used them and they were just fine. I peeled those, and again, I'm chopping them into small pieces. And if you're going to make this in the slow cooker, basically I would just brown up your meat and your onions, and then at that point, transfer it to the slow cooker, add the rest of your ingredients, and cook it on low all day. If you're doing it on the stovetop, you would just want to make sure that you simmer it on low heat. The main thing that you're doing is just cooking the veggies through. Okay, so the main formula for any type of vegetable soup is tomato products plus broth. So you can see here that I had some cans of tomato juice in my pantry to use up. I have some crushed tomatoes, some diced tomatoes, and some beef broth that I pulled out of the freezer. That is the main sort of formula, I guess you would say, for the broth of this soup. If you were making like a chicken or a turkey vegetable soup, you could use chicken broth plus tomatoes. Whatever you have in your house, use up. It will work just fine. So I'm adding my veggies, my stock, and my tomato products to the Instant Pot. My soup ended up a little bit fatty, and I think that's because one of the jars of broth that I used was actually from a beef roast, and so it did turn out a little bit fattier than I liked, but that's fine. We still ate it, and I actually refrigerated the leftovers overnight and then skimmed the fat off. So I also went ahead and added some frozen corn. I was going to add some green beans, but I didn't have any in the freezer. So I'm going to put my lid on my Instant Pot, set that to sealing, and then I just used the soup button, and that will set it to 20 minutes at high pressure. While the soup was cooking, I'm going to show you guys how to make these easy cheddar biscuits. I shared these a couple videos ago, and they are delicious. This recipe came out of a Cook's Illustrated magazine, and I'll type it out down below for you. So at any given time, I probably have most of the ingredients for this in my house, and I am putting into my mixing bowl some flour, some baking powder, and some salt. And the fat in this recipe is actually cream. So if you have heavy cream on hand, and you have flour and you have cheese, which I always have cheese in my house, you can definitely make this. So I'm just grating up some fresh sharp cheddar cheese for this recipe. I think you could definitely play around with different types of cheeses. I think pepper jack would be good. I do think that you want sort of a strong cheese. That way it makes your biscuits a little bit more flavorful. So I am mixing together my dry ingredients with some cheese, and next I will add the cream and then mix that up. There is no special instructions on this recipe. Anyone can make it. It's super easy. You don't have to knead it for a super long time. You don't need a mixer or anything like that. Now, if you ask if you can substitute milk or buttermilk or something like that, the answer is I'm not sure. I don't know. You could try it. I think it might work, but Again, I'm not sure. So once that was all mixed together, I just turned it out onto a floured countertop, and you basically just want to kind of knead this until it all comes together. You're going to end up patting it into a circle and then cut it into wedges. You could cut it into circles or squares also. It just depends on what your preference is. I don't know about you guys, but whenever I make soup or stew, I always like to have some type of bread or rolls or biscuits on the side. It's just super comforting to me. And I know I'll probably get some questions on my chef's knife, so I'll link those down below. I've really been loving them. So the recipe calls to bake these for about 8 minutes, take them out, put some cheese on top, and bake them another 8 minutes. Here's what they look like when they're done. These are super addicting. You need to make this recipe ASAP. They are delicious. All right, so next I'm just going to let the steam out of my Instant Pot. When you cook a large volume of soup like this, it does create a lot of pressure, so it may take some time to release that. But here is my completed vegetable beef soup. Again, this is a super simple recipe. There's not any rocket science going on here, but it's very budget friendly. Very filling and very crowd pleasing. My kids love this. We do serve it with some crackers, and we had some cut up fruit on the side as well as some veggies. All right, last but not least is a recipe for crustless quiche. I love sharing recipes like this where they're super versatile and you can use up a lot of ingredients that you have in your freezer and refrigerator. So I am chopping up some green onions for this. You can actually save the bottoms of your green onions and put them in a jar with water and regrow them. That's what I've been doing. I'm going to be using some plain ground pork for this recipe, and so I wanted to flavor it like breakfast sausage. So you saw the spices there that I flavored it with: sage, marjoram, a tiny little bit of cloves, and some red pepper flakes. And I'm also adding the scallions to that ground pork. This is about 3/4 of a pound of ground pork that I had in my freezer that I wanted to get used up. So after the pork was cooked through, I took my round dish and I'm just going to spoon that homemade breakfast sausage, I guess you could call it, into the bottom of my dish. Now you could use any type of meat or veggies that you have on hand for this. I've made crustless quiche before with bacon. You can make it also with cut up ham if you have lunch meat that you want to get used up. I think my favorite is probably the sausage, quite honestly, but again, I've made it a lot of different ways and it's good any way you make it. You could add some sauteed zucchini in there or peppers or whatever you have. This is also a great way to use up any little bits of shredded cheese that you have in your refrigerator drawer. I'm adding some Parmesan cheese along with some shredded Colby Jack. And then next you can just beat your eggs up. So I'm adding some half and half to my measuring cup here, and I'm going to add, I think I used 5 eggs in this. You can basically use as many as you want to sort of make the volume that you want for this quiche. This also reheats really well, and so I like to make this on the weekends. We have it for breakfast, and then any leftovers I just store in the refrigerator and we can heat them up in the microwave during the week. After the eggs are thoroughly mixed up, just go ahead and pour those over the cheese and the meat and any veggies that you have in the bottom of your dish. And that's it. I did pop this in the oven at 375 for about 35 minutes. Just keep an eye on it and make sure that it doesn't get overcooked. All right, so I'm going to put a plug in for these Idaho spuds. These are dried hash brown potatoes. I've really been loving these. You can get them in a big box at Costco, and basically you just rehydrate them with hot water. I don't boil my water or anything. I just use it hot, straight out of the tap. And these make for the crispiest, most delicious breakfast hash browns you could ever want. I just saute them up in a skillet with some butter and olive oil. And the best thing about these is that they don't take up room in your freezer. You can get them super crispy. I season them with salt and pepper, and you can always have them on hand in your pantry. So here is what my crustless quiche looked like when I took it out of the oven. It looked really, really delicious, and it tasted delicious too. I let that cool for a couple minutes before I sliced into it. But here it was, our breakfast on this particular day. All ingredients that I had on hand. I did not have to go to the store for anything. So I want to thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I hope that you are all doing well, and I hope this gave you some inspiration for cooking things out of your own freezer and pantry. If you have any questions, please leave them for me in the comments below, and don't forget to check out Christine's channel. I will leave the link for her video and her channel in the description box below, so check that out. If you're looking for more pantry cooking inspiration, check out these videos as well. I hope you all have a great day. Bye.